65.
65. I like how you keep track of the numbers now.
Yeah, I don't know why.
You don't know why? Because for some reason we say it out loud whenever we start this.
It's burnt into the image, and it says so in the title. But
I
don't know.
Maybe it sets a precedence of some sort into the podcast, like into the episode.
Right. There's something magic about certain numbers.
I was thinking. Okay, so let's say we're on 65 right now.
What do you mean? Let's say it's true. You don't believe me?
I know. I believe you. I'm just saying. Let's say we believe in numbers and we're on 65 right now. I was thinking, if I'm gonna listen to the podcast number 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, would I be like, oh, I was a total idiot? Don't listen to anything I said then.
There's a good chance.
At which point, right, does the progression and the point of self-awareness loop over to where you think you're the idiot?
I don't know.
How many podcasts back do you think you're an idiot?
There's like a trailing 6 months or 12 months. It's like everything before that. Oh, who is that bozo?
Yeah, is that 6 months? Do you think 6 months back?
Six, somewhere between 6 and 12 months ago. Everything before that was dumb. Now I've got it all figured out. No.
Well, no.
I know I don't have it all figured out, but I've at least learned some lessons in the last, 6 to 12 months that,
Well, no, just think about what you and I were when we started the podcasting and the position from which we started the podcasting and even the goal with which we started podcasting. I mean, heck, we even changed the name of the podcast since then.
Yeah.
I was thinking we were just in a completely different place. I mean, the whole point of the podcast is to see our dumbass growth.
Yeah.
So as far as accomplishment of that goal, it totally is on track.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, but from my personal self-evaluation standpoint, I would just look at how long back would I look at myself? 10 episodes, 5 episodes, 3, I don't know, 50, and go, oh my gosh, who is that person? That was just ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, to begin with, I was super nervous, like being on camera and talking to a microphone
We're
and all
not
this
even
stuff.
on camera.
I don't even, huh?
We're not even on camera.
Should be.
I mean, you know what I mean? The camera is just pointless.
No, I know. It's, but I was really nervous about it. And, like 10 in, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, this is.
Well, no, I wasn't talking about that. I was just talking about like our views.
I know.
On like life and what it means to have awareness. How much awareness we had then as opposed to now.
Right.
Maybe that's
I know what you meant, but to me, there's a very big, obvious difference in how I felt in the chair talking, because we do this, multiple times a week. We're just not on camera. And the goal is it's just going to be the same thing, just on camera.
Yeah. Just the nervousness of that.
Yeah, the nervousness of that, the vulnerability of talking about, our own problems and this and that. And it doesn't even matter anymore. It's like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm trying to think vulnerability. I guess I have, like, maybe that's a problem that I've always had. Like, I'm just so vulnerable all the time, period, to everybody at all times, to where it's like, it's just the most, and I think I said this in the beginning of the podcast. So if I said this, I still do agree with my 1.5 years ago self, right? If we're just honest about what we're experiencing and what we're going through, day to day, month to month, year to year, whatever it is, right? And if we don't judge ourselves for it and we just accept it as it is, and then in fact go out into the world and go, here's my truth, and here's what I'm struggling with, and here's the bullshit that I'm dealing with today, then everybody would almost be able to have this permission within themselves to find that truth within, their own truth within, if they see somebody else be a complete idiot. I mean, I know that's saying I'm an idiot. I don't think I'm an idiot. I'm just going through, the tribulation that is life on earth, that is the discovery of self, that is acquiring even, 1.00001 of a wisdom. Do you know what I mean? So just, there's a benefit to just, I guess if you had to classify it in the funny way as us being idiots on camera, I think there's a huge benefit to that.
Yeah.
So whatever point of awareness I had then, the goal, I guess, is still kind of the same. That we are honest and we are still here and we're still growing and we're still trying to figure out
still here
what is happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the topic is kind of just straight out of that, is what we're going through right now. And then maybe just trying to actualize that into what it actually means or how we actually feel. But the chances are, for going through that, I'm assuming everybody else is feeling the exact same thing. And so when this will publish, it'll be maybe like a month late, but
Probably early December.
Yeah, but we are in early November.
Probably mid-December, actually.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a hindrance in us publishing so far out, or if it doesn't matter. I don't know. So anyway, yeah.
Yeah. So what is the topic? You didn't actually introduce it.
Oh no, I was just blabbing out. I completely forgot what I was talking about.
Talking about us being idiots. Forgetful idiots.
So no, what I want to talk about is what I'm feeling right now is this, the internal feeling of dissolution, dissolution, which also
not disillusion, disillusion.
Yeah,
like dissolving.
Like things are dissolving, like things are dying off, things are going away.
Dissolution.
I don't know. You're the English speaker here. Right. But my dissolution and disillusion is probably the same thing. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like the illusion is going away.
Yeah.
And then thus it's dissolving. So dissolving of dissolution may be kind of like we're trying to combine two words into one, but maybe that is actually indeed what is happening. It feels like things are just dying off. And I said this to you a couple of days ago. I'm like, I don't know I cannot pinpoint to you in anything at all that I could say this. It's happening in my dreams very vividly. Like things are just being ripped apart, being ripped open. And what's maybe even more important is they're entering into some sort of point of rawness. But it's almost like things need to enter into the rawness and dissolve completely. The illusion has to dissolve, right? Before you start rebuilding. And for the last week, I have been dreaming and then kind of like on the back of my mind experiencing that, like this rawness of things that just feel like they're slipping away. Again, nothing in concrete, just that feeling.
Yeah. I mean, if I had to pick something that's slipping away, it's the stuff that it's the idea of things mattering, things being important. That just the whole concept of that feels, and it has, over the last year or two, I don't even want to say the number of things has decreased, although it has. It's more like the idea of things being important is just lessened. It's just like saying nothing matters sounds like it's some sort of depressive fit, but it isn't that. This isn't a bad thing. This is just like maybe it's some sort of unattachment type thing. It's just like, I don't even know how to describe it.
As you progress into the point of awareness and you become aware of more things about yourself or about your life or about the structures or beliefs or whatever, right? And you see them for what they are. They're, narratives in order to mask off and not feel or not be scared or whatever. The idea behind them goes, wait, what the heck? And so then you just let go of the narratives and these structure blocks that used to be so important because they were there to mitigate something, to mitigate fear, to mitigate scarcity, to mitigate not being loved or whatever, right? In our case. And then you start the process of like, okay, well, it doesn't actually, they don't need to be there.
Right. And that when I say that, I mean both physical items and also like the seriousness of it all. I guess I think I used to be really serious. Or I felt everything's really serious and really important. And it's just, and every now and then, things come back that, I put way too much weight on. But like, I don't feel like not very much is serious anymore. It's just all kind of like, calling it a game feels like the right way to word it because it just seems like we're just in a game.
Yeah, or like a play.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but maybe that's amplifying more and more.
Yeah.
Just that feeling of like, yeah, I'm like, it's a pick your own adventure. Isn't it in Minecraft? Or like, that's a new thing everywhere. Like all these games are now have pick your own adventures.
I think Netflix did a couple
Shows
that were like, you pause, the show pauses and you go, does he go through the door or does he leave the room? I don't know, something like that. I never saw any, but I think they did some.
Yeah.
I think they did a Black Mirror where you can do that, which is probably its own version of messed up. But
I never watched that show. That's the one that sticks with you?
I never saw that one.
Oh, yeah?
But I think Black Mirror, I think they did a Choose Your Own Adventure Black Mirror.
Oh, okay.
But just all the Black Mirrors are just, things don't go well. There's almost a moral lesson in each one, but things never go well. Always go horribly wrong in ways that are, if there's a lesson, it's like, it's often technology, but some sort of technology or cultural thing, oh, we go down this path thinking everything's going to be great and whatever, but then, it goes horribly wrong.
Like we don't see something?
We don't predict how bad it can go. And it goes really bad.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole other potential doomsday episode.
Yeah.
But, that maybe it's a question to bring in. Like, if things are dissolved, right? We talked about, before we started the podcast, about a dream that I had where, I guess with me, I'm struggling, maybe, on some levels, like I'm struggling that the structures, so like a lot of the structure and the belief and the form of your functionality comes out of the childhood, right? Comes out of your childhood. So your trauma triggered responses come out of the childhood notions of self, right? And to me, like usually in dreams, homes represent the way you flow into the world. Like your belief structures are what you're set up to experience, right? The home represents that. And then I've been having dreams where my childhood home is ripped into shreds, torn apart. And then also, of course, the home that we live is torn apart and ripped to shreds, right? And so just like complete dissolution of my psyche, of my way of previous thought of being is being completely interesting.
Torn down?
Yeah, torn down and torn apart. And then what's left is the raw process, the raw ground around it. Do you know what I mean? And then the message that I'm getting is that the rebuilding will be elsewhere and it will be something new. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then, the car dreams that I'm having, right, where I'm giving half a car and I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, well, you just stick with this for a while and then you actually get the car. You know what I mean? So it's like these, like, we're going to be in this raw state where things are falling apart and they're torn apart. And then in my case, like, let's say if I'm interpreting it from my individual standpoint, then thus I'm in charge of reconstructing or building something else, something new. But I would assume just like the macro scale replies to the micro scale and vice versa, and they're just all conjoined. Maybe that is the sentiment of planetary sentiment. And then I'm just interpreting it very much on my micro scale of personal interpretation of like my belief structures and my definitions and my sentiments. Right? We've been talking about like how the definitions of beliefs create and manifest our reality. But what if that structure gets completely ripped open and ripped away, in fact? Yeah, there you go. Right, you're saying that the structures for you of like things that used to matter, like don't matter anymore, right? But think about it in the way that is what is needed in order to pave the path for room for something new. Or if something new
to matter, or just to clear out space?
No, to clear out space. So then day to day, you can actually function in the present moment.
Right, because that was so, honestly, that was so energetically large.
Yeah, it took up a lot of space.
The idea, my whole life has been very serious. And, I don't mean serious in like because I'm, kind of goofy and I, like funny things and everything, not serious like that. Just, I take it seriously internally. I took everything very serious and everything was very important to me.
Well, no, your goofiness half of the time is just a coping mechanism with uncomfort. That's what they used to be. So even the goofy parts are not very serious. Of like, look, I feel like shit. I can't process, right? I can't mitigate this feeling. Or what's the easiest solution? Or the go-to humor.
Right. You sent me that that Instagram thing from that rabbi.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you want to give context?
Sure. It's this rabbi, and he's talking about addiction. He's like, there's people addicted to, drugs or gambling or whatever. And, we all think that it's the drugs or the gambling that's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
But no, it's the drugs and the gambling and the risky behavior and the whatever that is the solution.
Yeah, I like that wording a lot.
To the addicted person's problem. And what is the addicted person's problem? It is that they are uncomfortable with themselves.
Yeah.
And so in order to soothe that discomfort, you numb it out with drugs or alcohol or gambling or, whatever. It doesn't even matter what it is.
Yeah.
Candy Crush or Instagram or whatever.
Yeah.
There's anything that's distracting. It's for the purpose of making you, numbing out and bypassing the uncomfortable feeling of just being yourself and or being with yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Because like the second you get left alone with yourself and you're faced with what is actually inside your mind, most people run away.
Yeah.
Right.
That can be I know from personal experience, that can be a very dark place.
Yeah. No, I sent it to you because I'm like, I love, he's very eloquently, within 30 seconds, positions that something that you and I would have spent podcasts on.
I think I've known that inside because, when I've said it on the podcast before, everybody, they get something out of it. I think that's a really good way to say what I guess I meant, but I've never been able to articulate well. That whether it's alcohol or heroin or gambling or you get something out of it.
Well, because something out of it is distraction.
Yes. I think I was not completely on the right path to get there. But that is it.
Yeah.
To get to that conclusion, I mean.
Yeah, no, and I like he started, the video started by saying he's like, he doesn't like talking about it because most of the people who are in the industry who invite him to talk about it, talk about the wrong thing. Like, oh, how do we fight addiction?
How do we stop, get rid of the alcohol, get rid of the drugs?
Or how do we, this is going to be negative, but like, the whole AAA situation where you like have the steps and
AA, AA.
Whatever. Same thing.
AAA has steps. You have to call the number. You have to give them the number, and then they tell them where you are, what's wrong with your car. Should I just put the video in?
What people don't understand about addiction, which is actually the reason why I decline most invitations to speak about the topic, is that people think that addiction has to do with drugs and alcohol. And it has really very, very little to do with drugs and alcohol. First of all, there are other addictions. People become addicted to behaviors or to people, relationships. It doesn't have to be a chemical. But secondly, and much more importantly, what people don't get is that the drug that the person is using to numb themselves is not the problem, it's the solution. I'll say it again. The drug is not the problem. The drug is the solution. Yeah, it's a solution that destroys your life, but it's a solution nonetheless, meaning to say, the real issue of addiction is the underlying issue that the addict is attempting to address through the self-numbing behavior of the drug of choice. And what is that underlying condition? Very, very, very simple. A deep discomfort with one's own self. It's like being allergic to one's own self, uncomfortable in your own skin, terminally unique, lonely in a crowded room, always wanting to feel a part of, instead feeling apart from. And that is that gnawing feeling that the drug or the alcohol, the high-risk behavior is being used to numb the person from, to distract them from.
Do we pause?
And now we're back.
Do you pause this?
Huh.
Okay.
Through the magic of editing, we don't actually have to spend a minute.
Okay. No, yeah, right. And so, the triple A thing, right. The whole thing is like, oh, you're an addict for life. It's like the whole thing is that actually not healing and not actualizing yourself into. Now, I will say this, the caveat. I mean, obviously, if you're addicted to alcohol, and that is a step forward to stop, so you can actually start actualizing into what the addiction is and blah blah blah. But the steps don't actually go. Wait, what pain am I numbing? Like, right, those steps don't have that in them.
I don't think they do. I mean,
and the whole like, oh, once an addict, I'm an addict for life. It's like, that seems like some sort of lifetime sentence.
Right.
Why are you living with that?
I know that.
Which is shame, right? You're living with ongoing shame that, look, I was an alcoholic and I'm still an alcoholic and I'll be an alcoholic and I'm okay with that. Why are we masking that truth as opposed to going, well, no, the reason why I started drinking is because I was feeling like shit about this thing. And that is my truth, not the alcoholism. That's just how I dealt with it.
Yeah.
But can we not look over here? The elephant in the room.
Yeah. I know a lot of people really, really like the AA program, and it really works for a lot of people.
I'm sure it's
and the way,
fine.
And there was a lot, I don't remember the story. There's a whole interesting story on the origin of it and everything. But,
that is what Earth needed in order to deal with awareness or lack of awareness back then.
If it works for you, that's great. Do it. But
once you're there, there's a whole other procedure forward.
That's my larger problem with all of psychiatry and psychology, is that it doesn't seem to go there, or if it does, it takes forever to get there. Is that everybody wants to deal with the surface issues, because the surface issues are what are super apparent at any time. At any time, it's, my wife did this and we're having this argument over this, and that's the problem. Yeah, that's not the problem.
Yeah,
that's what you think the problem is, but the problem is a couple layers deep about your mommy issues, or who knows what it is, but it's not the current fight you have about who didn't clean out the sink. That is not the problem.
Yeah.
That is the
just outflow of deeper trauma.
Yeah, there's a word I'm looking for here. That is a symptom. That is a symptom of the problem.
Yeah.
In the same way that a fever is the symptom of the flu or the cold or the COVIDs or whatever. But and it's not that you don't necessarily want to treat the fever. Maybe you do, maybe you don't.
It turns out you don't.
Turns out short of it getting to the danger zone, you don't necessarily need to treat a fever. But you can treat the fever all you want, but if you don't get rid of the underlying flu, you're still sick.
Yeah, right. But if you take things from that standpoint, even treating flu is also surface dwelling, right? Because the flu is there as a larger symptom of something else,
right?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like
it gets deep.
Yeah, when you start going down and like looking at things more and more granularly, right? Like deep down, everything stems out of really.
I'm scared.
Yeah, I'm in fear. I'm scared, and this is the way I'm using to mitigate whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so maybe what we started talking about and what we kind of bringing on is this disillusion of things, letting go of the illusion of all the stuff that we have created and all these structures and all these belief systems and all the really personalized belief systems that then propagate into society, and then societal beliefs that feed our beliefs. You know what I mean? It's kind of this like endless loop. They're kind of dissipating and dissolving.
Yeah, I think so. I think it feels like a completely different world than it did certainly 5-10 years ago. But even 1 year ago, it feels lighter. Did I say that after all the nonsense around election time?
Yeah, but that's probably a reflectory nature of like our human psyche as well, that fight within between I'll just kind of like extrapolate it out and like look at it from the top, and I'm not actually drawing any distinctions between the parties. I'm just looking at it like what does this signify, right? If you looked at the election as signification of what is it that the country is facing, actually very internally, but because through the morphic resonance, therefore externally. And it's this internal fight between the light and the dark, or really the perception thereof, the perception of the light and the dark, right? That we all have our demons inside. They're only there to mitigate our fears, right? And then we all have the truth that is unwavering. And in fact, it does not divide itself in the binary nature of reality. Like dualistic split between good and bad, right? It doesn't actually affect the wholeness that is within us. And so if the country is facing this huge divide and has been facing this over and over and over, but right now, if I had to summarize it, I would have said it is more charged than ever before, right? No, it's more charged because it is in resonance with the country. It is in resonance with the turmoil or the fight that we have within ourselves, right? Because if we're facing this and we perceive it in the outside world, the truth is it's just reflecting the internal nature of what we're feeling. And the ... the truth is whether or not we want to admit to it or not. So that internal fight that we have within us then extrapolates itself as a manifestation in the outside world.
Yeah.
But the internal fight, what I want to say, is actually great because that is when the truth is actually pushing to the surface and and brings forth the apparent divide within us of good and bad into like open reality, right? If we're hiding away from the knowing of ourselves, of like that internal fight, and we're trying to propagate it out, as it comes up, it amplifies itself in the outside world. But the truth is, it's because it's amplifying itself within us, right? So we are, by default, because this is the nature of the reality that we're facing right now, are having to face our darkest points of self. That rawness, maybe, that we addressed.
It's all being like squeezed up to the surface.
Yeah. But, I've been saying this forever. Like, well, let's say whatever chronology you believe in, Earth as a system will no longer be able to have this divide within us. Like, we will not continue to live with internal divide. And so we have to heal this divide and actually integrate into the wholeness of us, right? And so then, the country kind of reflects that nature. But the truth is the country reflects that nature. But if you look at the current events of the world, it's the same story.
Right.
Ukraine has been in a war for the last 2 years. No one gives a...
Pushing 3.
Okay, yeah, 3 years. Nobody cares about it. But that's it. It's a divide that country is facing and then propagating, facing the demons within.
Right.
Israel is an example of that. Africa is always in some sort of conflict. No one cares about that. Do you know what I mean? So there's always this fight between the light and the dark. But because that nation or that group of people or that country is finally allowing itself fruition into integration of individual soul.
Right. What's interesting is the scale. It's the same at every scale. And it's more as above, so below.
Yeah.
Situation. There's Ukraine and Russia. There's the West. Whether that's NATO and Russia. Here's like two halves of the world that just don't like each other. Quote quote. All the way down to in the United States, there's the left and the right that don't like each other, and then and you get down to in this community. Well, my neighbor's got a Trump, and the other neighbor's got a Harris, and down to inside of yourself.
Yeah,
it's all the way up and all the way down.
Yeah, but how beautiful is that?
Right, it's the same thing.
And it's the same thing. Yeah.
Here we all think, oh well, if only Russia would do this, if only this political party would do that, if only, but nobody's. But you're up there at the symptoms, because all those issues, all these people dying from this war and that war and this conflict and this genocide and whatever, are all because way down at the bottom we don't like ourselves.
Mhm.
We are uncomfortable with ourselves.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, for most of us,
We're at war with
we're at
ourselves.
war with ourselves. And for most of us, it's, drugs and alcohol or whatever it happens to be. But for some of us in a position to, it's invade or whatever
Mhm.
well, I don't feel great about myself, but if I could capture some of that territory over there, then I would feel better about myself. Maybe something to that extent. Some people have more power and influence and can, instead of self-harm, it ends up they have enough resources to do more damage with it.
Yeah. Yeah, but in the long run, though, that any damage going out is a damage that you already feel inside.
Yes,
It's never
it is.
the damage that is going out is really the damage that you have within, and you're just propagating as a manifestation
Right.
out. It's never like, oh, that manifestation out is coming in.
Right. But what I'm saying is, I don't have the resources to go invade a country, but there are a handful of people who do, leaders of other countries, I guess.
Yeah, no, but deep down, I mean, I think people have been now that the culture kind of looks at the underlying causes of everything. I mean, people have been saying forever that like everything that we have in this world is a manifestation of someone's pain and trauma. And process manifestation of pain and trauma, it reaches some sort of point of overflow. It goes into the cumulative amorphic resonance because everyone's really dealing with the same pain and trauma. It doesn't really matter what the details are, right? Like the flavor of the Kool-Aid might be different, but guess what? You're still drinking the same poison. Yeah, and then it just gathers momentum by the number of people that get sucked in, both physically, through like and then but actually, truthfully, emotionally, into the trauma. Like right now, I know it's physical. You can't separate the physical from the emotional, but the truth is the emotional influx, an energetic influx, a personal power of self that we have, that is our energetic force, that is being surrendered to or given up for this cumulative cause that is a war against, you name it, right?
Yeah.
There's war inside, and then you're like, oh, I'll have to attribute this to somehow because I feel like shit. And so then you're like, oh, well, let me go a war against cancer, or a war against the war, or a war against the poverty, or a war against the homelessness. And you're just warring. It doesn't even matter what it is. And I will point out, I mean, I've said this before, both on good and bad. It doesn't actually matter what you're warring.
Yeah,
as long as you internal
fight
self.
cancer, fight homelessness, on the surface, that sounds like a good thing. But,
Yeah, but we always say
yeah,
this.
yeah.
Yeah, we always say this.
Yeah, I mean, just to sum it up, instead of fighting against cancer and fighting against homelessness, it's why don't we support people to enable them to have homes, or embody healthiness. That's
Yeah, but really the truth is, why don't we step back, go inside and go, what the fuck I'm doing? Look at what I'm doing with myself. If I'm fighting anything, war or cancer, homelessness or, I don't know, racism, whatever, is there any war inside of me? Right? Do I need to bring more awareness to what I actually have inside of me? Why am I in resonance with any of it? Do you know what? None of us are, because this is radical. Like to take responsibilities for war in Ukraine on me would be radical. But that is true, right? I'm a Ukrainian. I have opinions about the war. I have opinions about how I want it to turn out. I have opinions about like I don't want the suffering to happen. I'm like, which within itself is judgment. Like, oh, well, look, there's the people suffering. Well, who determined that they're suffering? I'm determining that they're suffering. That is my truth. That is my opinion. Now, whether or not it's valid or not is completely irrelevant. Do I have energy that is propagating in some sort of lock about the opinion that there's people out there suffering?
I think if you get all riled up about something, there's energy there.
Well, if there's tension, right? There's tension in your body. You're like, oh, that feels like shit. I don't want that. I don't want to feel that. There you go. Right there is where you start. Right. And so yeah, I mean, to go back, like that dissolvement of things it feels like, from my standpoint, it is right now the quiet obviousness of this dualistic nature that I have been operating with, right? And then the shedding of those concepts of like, okay, well, the narratives no longer stand. The stories no longer stand. Like the ideas that there's division, the ideas that there is good versus bad, the ideas that like one is right and somebody else is wrong, none of that actually makes sense. Do you know what I mean? I know that's difficult to say, especially after we just finished the election, but it is irrelevant, one, and then illusionary, thus untruthful. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And so untruth is just very apparent, like it's staring at everybody in the face. More so, this is what's interesting is when in the past you had enough momentum to be able to sustain the illusion and propagate the illusion forth, and then that illusion would take on its own form and its own momentum and then continue to exist for decades or years or whatever. Now, I have been saying this, but it's coming into fruition. Now the illusion cannot take form, hold form. And in fact, the old illusions are like dissipating and dissolving.
Momentum's a really good way to put that, because that's what it is. It is like, oh, well, it's always been this way, so it'll be this way. Why is it like this? Because it's always been that way. Because I've always felt that way. But it does start to fall apart lately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that momentum is no longer working.
You can just, if you could turn on the news at any point in history, and it's never great stuff, right? That's the whole point of the news, is it's not, hey, sunshines and rainbows. It's not that. But right now, I think everything is just at this thing, and everybody's feeling it.
It doesn't feel like Papa Pow, though. Does it feel like Papa Pow? It feels like death and dissolvement and unstructuring, and it feels raw, but doesn't feel like life ending. Do you know?
No, I don't mean life ending. I mean like it's just like everything has bubbled to the surface, and it just can't stay buried anymore.
Yeah. Which is great. Which is amazing.
Like a volcano. That's what the pow is. It's like it's right there, and or exploding out. And when it explodes out, people do crazy shit. That's like the symptom. That's the next level symptom, as you know.
Or if you're perceiving the explosion on the physical level, and then if you're doing something about it on a physical level, then people will be physically doing crazy shit. But but the truth is that explosion is happening emotionally on the inside. It's a physical, it's a very individualized interpretation of that explosive nature of self, where you have to face your truth. We kind of talked about that on the last podcast when we talked about suicide, right? It's kind of that same concept of like, there's this mass healing that is happening. And so you're facing a lot at the same time. If you haven't been working on facing a little bit at a time, like you and I have, and been taking this gradually and as softly as possible, right? Most people never got that chance. Or everybody still has that chance, but a lot of people,
right?
But like all of a sudden, you're like, whoa, and it's an explosion. And then you're like, oh my gosh, that is a lot to face all at once.
Sure.
And that's the overwhelm, right? But all of that, maybe this is the continuation of that conversation, it's like making space for the truth, right? It's not overriding anything other than it's dissolving the illusion, which have been saying this, but I will repeat this maybe from a different angle. It's just dissolving narratives and it's dissolving illusion. And it's simply going, okay, well, if the nature of false rhetoric or false sentiment across all forms and all scales dissolves, there's nothing really left other than the present moment and the truth.
Right.
And that's really the only thing you can ask for, which is amazing. Like, I think it's amazing to be in that space and for us to experience of how that looks like, right?
Yeah, because we get to see both or at least from our point of view. We can see kind of the peace within, and we can also witness the chaos within.
on your scale? Like you can see the peace that you have within and the chaos that you have flowing out?
In multiple ways. I can see the chaos that I always had, and I can see how it's much more peaceful now. And at the same time, I can see there's a lot of chaos in a lot of people right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it's getting to the point where it's people will be forced to kind of choose between you're gonna keep this chaos up because that's gonna kill you, or do you want to
dissolve?
Yeah, dissolve it. But that's scary. I know that. I get that that's scary. There's a lot. The idea. Go back 5 years for me, and the idea of not taking everything so seriously is scary. To 2019, 2018, 2015, Elliot, that is scary because I'm giving up control and I'm giving up what I think is I have opinions about what is right and what is wrong, and it's all very serious and it's all very important, and now it sounds ridiculous, but I know
you had formed that identity.
I had formed an identity around it, and it's giving up. Yeah, there it is. It's giving up this identity, which you believe is you. It's not you,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, you believe it's you, and like giving it up, like it feels like it literally equals death.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But
So,
it is kind of it is, but it's in the good way.
It is a death of this identity, maybe partially ego in there too, which is really scary and really hard and can be really painful. And you don't know what's on the other side because, you're like, that's who I've been for the last, all of my life. What else is there other than this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's what I said, right? Like there's this underlying sense of panic, not because there's actually something to panic about in real life, but because that panic is an emotional internal panic of like, I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know what the future holds, because if only thing is I've known was point A and I was traveling on the straight highway to point B, then you controlled all aspects on that road.
Yep.
Right? You had all your luggage, all your baggage that was coming with you, but it was familiar and it was known and it was easy to handle because guess what? I'm dragging myself and everything I know with me. But all of a sudden, if just the highway goes away, you go off to the side of the road and now you're in point C, which you never even imagined in being, and your luggage is gone and your car is gone and the house is gone and there's nothing left. In my case, the cell phone's gone and the childhood home is gone and your current home is gone and the car is like everything was gone, right? And then you find yourself with like, wait, I'm at the point of zero. I have to rebrand myself. Like everything that used to be me and everything that I thought held me as a signature, that definition of Tanya that existed for whatever reason, let's be honest, it wasn't great, but out of self-defense and protection and safety and fear, is dissolved. And you're like, I have nothing else. I don't know, right? That is scary. It is scary that there's all points of you that are completely dissolving and going away. And I don't even know who I am.
Right.
Day to day, minute to minute, you're like, I'm still here. Like you've been saying this, like, it looks like I'm still here. I don't know, I'm here. Right. And like, but it's that, like, what's interesting is the shocking part that being in the moment and just being here without any definition is both scary and liberating at the same time.
Yeah, you eventually come to realize that you don't need to define yourself.
Or anything around you.
Yeah. You've had this definition, I am this, I am that, whatever, I do, you don't, once you actually let that go, you realize you don't need it. It didn't actually serve you. If anything, it held you back. Because it's like, it puts you in this box. I am this and I'm not those things and whatever. And when you let it go, the box disappears. Which it sounds like it's just a bunch of, I don't know, hippie mumbo jumbo, but you can still do the same things. You can still, from the outside, anybody would say, yes, you look no different than you were before. But the way you feel, the way you interpret the world
Yeah.
changes vastly.
Yeah. Well, like your emotional range of awareness is just way up. It's heightened. And then you're just aware of everything that is nonsense. Oh,
Which is basically everything.
everything. Yeah. You're just aware of everything. And then it turns out everything is nonsense.
You're aware that everything is nonsense. And so you don't take things seriously anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Alan Watts always struck me as a guy who doesn't take a lot of things seriously.
He took his incense seriously.
He took his incense seriously. There's a video about him and talking about incense. And it's a video, so obviously you can't experience it or smell it. But man, he had some opinions on incense.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, to him, just like you and I hold drinking cacao, drinking tea as a ritualistic process of settlement.
Right.
Incense to him was that.
Right. And it sounds like we're really serious about the cacao, but serious is not the word I would use.
No.
There's a reverence there, but it isn't like a serious in a, I say serious, I almost mean like, just like stuffy, seriousness.
You might wear the highway type of a situation.
I mean, not even that far. Even yes, but even less than that. Just the I don't know. Everything becomes lighter. Everything becomes more flowy. Everything becomes, you can find some sort of lighthearted humor in it. If you've ever listened to any of Alan Watts' talks, everything it's funny. He brings this lighthearted humor to it, and he's not trying to make jokes per se, but it's just nothing serious. He certainly doesn't take himself seriously.
No.
And it's just this free-flowing way to live, right? Yeah, like that. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, right. But it's almost like, I think the reason why that episode was important is that because it was an episode in a series, like he released a series of, let's say, 8 talks, and one of the talks was literally just on incense.
And he had all these incenses, some of which were incredibly expensive, I think.
Yeah.
And some
but
of
like
them
all of the talks were on actually topics that like most people would think Alan Watts would talk about. And then there's one of them is on incense. You're like, wait, what?
Right.
This whole episode is not just on incense.
Right. And we literally have incense burning right now.
Yeah.
And incense, it's like, I don't know. I think some people think, oh, we have to have incense in order to you don't have to have that. You don't have to have cacao. You don't have to have a chair. You don't have to have a meditation cushion. They're all just tools, but he felt passionately about incense.
Well, no, this is what I wanted to say. The reason why it was important to have that episode in let's say inside that 8 episode series is because it took a narrative of how somebody would approach life and how much seriousness he would give to life, to serious topics, such as whatever topics he discussed, right? And then you would go, oh, look, he's bringing the same amount of seriousness to incense, but none of it is charged. Everything is just an observation of a flow that is the awareness of your own personalized being. And his awareness extended to the curiosity and the reverence of incense.
Right. I mean, because you
in
can
clothes, right? He had episode on clothes,
right? Yeah,
on flow of energy and how clothes affects the kimonos affect flow of energy, and he talked about the fact that he does or does not wear underwear or something weird like that, and then the down there needs to have a flow. He's such a quirky. You're like, wait, what?
Right.
Right, but everything was with an awareness of the meaning behind it without the pain body associated with like, oh, I gotta do this right, and I have to buy this expensive incense, and I have to buy this expensive cacao, and I have to like have the ceremony, and do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everything is, and everything flew out of the moment.
Right. And none of it becomes necessary or required or even important. It's like, these are things that you can enjoy, and there's a whole, you can pick, you can incense, which before we ever had incense, I thought incense was one thing. And it's like, oh no, there's as many flavors of incense as there are of beer or whiskey or, carpet or whatever. It's like, if you want to dive into, pick a topic, tires, it's like, well, there's a lot to know about tires if you really care. There's a lot to know about incense if you really care. He really cared about incense. I don't care about tires. And, the only thing I care about incense is, do I like the smell? Yes or no? That's about as deep as I am in incense. But everybody has their passions, their interests and stuff.
Yeah. But think about this, like, I've noticed this, and I notice it more and more and more, how much of our day flows out of the moment, each moment. Like, even if we have something on the schedule, just like the way it propagates itself, it is nothing is a thing. Nothing is like, oh, there's this thing, and then this thing is the thing, and then like the entire day revolves around that thing, and then like
it used to be.
It used to be. That's what I'm saying. I'm doing it in comparison, but now it's like nothing is a thing. Quite literally, even if there is a plan, let's say, it is quite literally just a flow out of the next moment. Do you know what I mean? Like
when it's not, when it goes back to being a thing, because it does every now and then for me, I think for you too, sometimes.
And what is the example you're thinking of right now?
Sometimes there's like
there you go, our airport boarding, the whole conversation we had, that became a thing.
Yeah.
And nothing works.
When it does, it's so obvious, especially in retrospect. But even at the time, you're like, I know everything's really fucked up right now, and I'm just going to fight my way through it, type of thing.
Yeah, and it becomes, because it's a thing, it becomes even a bigger thing, and then there's no flow, and then it actually doesn't go well.
Yeah. Yes. There's no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then at that point, you're just at the mercy going, oh, please, just somebody override me right now.
Right. Because it like, I think both of us were like, I think we talked about this on the episode.
We talked about it a lot. We're still talking about it.
We're in the middle of it. It's this big thing that's consuming our mind. All we can think about is, we got to get to the airport. We got to hurry up. We got to.
Yeah.
And, and I'm thinking it. And at the same time, I'm observing myself thinking about it going, this is ridiculous. We have plenty of time. We calculated the time and we are on time, if not slightly ahead of time. But at the same time, there's this, feeling of, oh, we're going to be late.
Yeah.
And it explodes.
Do you know what I realized is, like, in that moment, the nervous system is in complete override. Like, the nervous system is shut down, and it's an override of some sort of predetermined flow that you're very familiar with and ingrained with. And it's almost like you can't override the system.
Right. I want to override the system. I want to let it go. I was thinking, logically, it doesn't make sense. I need to let it go. But I can't.
You can't. And so this is what I've been struggling with, and this is why I'm practicing it. I've realized that the best override I can do to myself is cold shower.
Oh yeah.
That is the quickest override of the nervous system. Like ice cold, not, however cold it will go, but without complete torture. But if you want a really, really quick and really, really thorough, just all the way cold. And so I notice, in the mornings, if I'm taking a shower, and I've told you this before we started recording, but I will repeat it here. Lately in the mornings, I've been waking up and have been spiked into the trigger of like that nervous system complete takeover, and I wake up with that overtake, right? And every morning I have to learn or practice how to basically calm the nervous system down and override it. Like, I'm practicing that every morning for the last 3 or 4 days, and it's challenging. But then I realized, oh my gosh, I'm learning to practice that in everyday life, just as I wake up, right? Like, how do I do it without the water? But if I want to cheat the system, go into the shower, turn on the hot water or the cold water, and it's like that. The system just completely gets rewritten. And then all of a sudden you're like, wait, what? Like, what was that even about? But that's the trick. The trick is just really, really cold shower, really, really fast. And then the nervous system basically physically gets rebooted, right? Now, after it gets rebooted, you can choose to once again dive back into whatever you were dealing with before.
Yeah.
Or you can just go, okay, why even bother?
Yeah. It's like it's a slap in the face.
Yeah, it's a slap in the face, but with me, cold water works well. But then after that, you can just basically like decide. You actually have a moment to step back and go, okay, where do I want to deal with? What is the actual truth? And the chances are, obviously, you will never go back to the whatever ride you were experiencing. But the system resets. I think that's why people who practice the whole cold water therapy, like the cold bath and the polar plunges and all that, that's why they like it so much.
Wim Hof type of thing?
Yeah, but like what was his name? The Thor guy, Chris Hemsworth, had an episode with in the Darren Aronofsky special
with
National Geographic something.
I don't remember his name.
Yeah, whatever it is. One of the episodes was about cold bath, and then the guy that you listen to on the podcast.
Yes, I'm trying to remember his name.
Ross.
Which is an E, maybe?
I don't know. The guy who did the swim around the Great Britain island, right?
That's what I was trying to remember his name. Ross.
I don't know, he's British. Whatever.
Link in the show notes.
But the reason why he enjoys that so much, it is because it literally overrides your system, right? And then in this case, not only does it override your system because it's a jolt, right? It actually sends you into a whole other set where then you're struggling physically. You're in the physical struggle, and then the pain that comes out of it and your body's need to survive comes out, and then you have to constantly be overriding the system. Right. So as he's swimming, he's constantly having to practice overriding the system over and over and over, right? Which is why he's so calm, I'm assuming, in everyday life, is because it fine-tunes that skill set in the override.
Yeah, he's got a energy about him, like this enthusiastic energy, but I sense like there's a calmness inside, but he's almost bubbly or something. He's
about the passion of swimming in the cold.
Because I listened to him on the Ritual podcast, and he feels very passionately about all these things, but in a healthy way, it seems.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, to some extent, I will say this. That becomes an addiction within itself.
Yeah.
Being in the adrenaline rush system to where you constantly have to self-regulate. That,
Yeah.
That,
I mean, I think he talked a bit about that too, about how, he's like, because he has quite a few, world records under his belt. And he's like, like, I don't want to paraphrase him, something along the lines of, the world records are nice. The records are nice and all, but it's not that. He's what was his reasoning? I don't remember. It seemed, more healthy than, get more records.
Well, just as a background on him, they said that with him, he has whatever gene defect that allows him.
He heals almost like,
Wolverine
style. Where his mother was 80 and she had a hip replacement and she was, off dancing 2 weeks later, something crazy. And he has it too, where he has very, very hyperactive bone marrow. And they're like, we usually see this in like terminal bone cancer patients where their bone marrow is, their bones are just overproducing whatever. But he doesn't have any illnesses, and he gets over any illness incredibly fast. And he may break a bone or have a cut or whatever, and he heals incredibly quickly, which lets him do crazy stuff and get away with it.
Yeah.
He's not that young.
Yeah, most people would not be able to do what he does.
The interesting thing about being in cold water, like really cold water, like near freezing water, is you can't do that long term. You will get hypothermia and die.
Mm-hmm.
You've only got however many minutes it is in that water, and the wetsuit helps give you a little bit more time and this and that. But
the wetsuits we had did not help with anything.
We had very uncomfortable wetsuits, but I imagine he has the best wetsuits money can buy. They physiologically, the cold water just interferes with the way that your muscles work and your nerves work. And at some point, you just can't
move.
Yeah, you can't. Your brain's like, okay, swim, and your muscles like, meh. Like you ever, you've been outside playing in the snow for too long, and it's like you just can't.
Yeah.
You just it just doesn't work. You might want your fingers to work, and you still have fingers, and you still have a brain, and everything's still there, but it just doesn't work at 100%. It's like that, except it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse until eventually you cannot swim and you drown if you don't die of hypothermia first. So there's like hard and fast, human limits to that extreme stuff. But, cold shower is not going to give anyone hypothermia.
This is just going back to my trauma, but I have a lot of mental paralysis around
being cold. I know.
Just so much.
You've passed it on to everybody you know.
Shut up. Well, it is paralyzing. Like, right, as a child, growing up in Ukraine, and this is, before whatever you want to call it, global warming and microplastics, whatever the reason is we're using today, it was just really cold. It was brutally cold.
Probably still cold in February in Ukraine.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, like, right, they already had snow plenty of times. And, this is November, right? We have yet to have snow here. Yeah, no, and I just remember the paralysis that comes with overwhelming amount of cold. Maybe that's why cold showers work so well for me, because it literally paralyzes me into the moment to where it, like your brain just shuts off and it overrides whatever brain bullshit that you're having at the time whenever you are over triggered, right? Whenever your nervous system is just running crazy, it literally shocks your system into that childhood trauma that I have of the paralysis of the cold. So maybe I'm just like using my childhood trauma to reloop myself back into the paralysis of the cold.
It's, that I'm sure that would work for anybody. That would probably work for me too. Sometimes at night, I'll get into some sort of mental spiral. It's never great. And it's like, I can't even get out of it. I have to get up and go get a drink of water and just remove myself from the bed. And then I can break out of it. I come back to bed and I'm like, it's just from a fresh start.
Yeah.
There's no, I don't know, cold shower at 2 a.m. probably wouldn't be.
No.
Wouldn't be.
I mean, it would probably be really helpful though.
Yeah.
Because your body would just probably be shocked.
Yeah.
And then you're exhausted.
Maybe. I don't know if that would wake me up or put me to sleep.
I really with me, just a complete reset. Because if you're overflowing,
maybe
that nervous system is just, it's almost like, I can almost see it spiking and triggering with all these blah, 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 blah. And you're like, whoa, it's just, what the heck is happening? But I feel that was the description of us trying to get to the airport in Canary Islands.
Yeah.
But lately I had micro versions of that as I wake up from whatever the dream is triggering. But it's usually some sort of death, not death, physical death, but death of a narrative or death of a structure or whatever, right? And then again, realize, I think this is for me, but I think this is for everybody right now. If the world is dissolving, right, and the illusions are breaking away, it almost feels like death over and over and over, on the micro scale, because oh, look, this system is falling apart and this system is falling apart and that system will be falling apart, because internally you have all these lies that are just oh my gosh, why, because if you let go of a lie, then you feel like it has to be replaced with something. And then you I don't know what to replace it, because surely something has to be in that place, because that was a placeholder.
Right.
But then it's really, really difficult to realize that, we will be without placeholders. And that's, your brain doesn't know what to do with that. Your brain does not know how, because think about this. This is going back to the double A, or I'll call it the triple A because it's funnier. Narrative that oh, look, the best way to break addiction is to replace it with something else. And we have been taught that. Oh, well, you want to break a bad habit? We'll just insert a good habit into it, and then rainbows and butterflies, and nobody has to think about anything. Well, that is how we've been functioning, but it is such a terrible way to work, because we've been trained not to find out what's behind addiction, number one, but just replace it with what, in Ukraine, like everybody was talking about how, alcoholism used to be the kind of like this primary like coping mechanism for former Soviet Union countries, in Ukraine and Russia. And then everybody was super proud and super happy that the country switched away from alcoholism to workout. And so all these men who used to be drunken alcoholics, and then the generation of their kids are now like super buff and super fit. And that's like a thing, which is great. I'm not saying it's not great because everybody loves being buff and fit, but the narrative is the trauma and the pain body that I still have is now being, just like that rabbi said, solutioned away instead of with alcohol,
right.
now with workout.
Right. That said, between heroin and exercise,
no,
the exercise,
it is great.
But
that is the teachings that we have been embedded to. We take one thing that is bad and just replace it with the good, and that's the solution.
Right.
As opposed to, let's narrow down why we're using the solution to mask off what.
Right. The exercise itself is not good or bad.
Yes. And so going back, the narrative of us dissolving our structures and dissolving our narrative and dissolving the illusion, and then having the need to have it be replaced with something does not work anymore. This disillusion is it. That is the end of the line. The dissolvement of the narrative, the dissolvement of the false, the dissolvement of perceived truth is it. And there will not be replacement. And so because we have been trained to always be replacing one thing with the next, currently right now we're facing the panic of like, I don't even know what's happening, one, but it's because deep down you're not realizing that things are dissolving, right? And then like, if you are feeling the panic, then you will be like, I don't know why I'm panicking, but maybe you're panicking is because your trained set of ways of working as you replace point A with point B, and then everything continues to be hunky-dory. But we're not on that road anymore.
Right.
We're now having to go to point C, where the narrative and the luggage and the cars and the houses, nothing is coming with us. We're just reinventing our life without any definitions and without any narratives and without any stories, without replacement. We're starting over from scratch. And that is really scary.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, that is what making space is to some point, the space is being made for us, whether we want it or not. But maybe the great thing, but also at the same time, scary thing, if you don't understand it, is the space is not going to have anything in it.
Right.
It's just an empty slate.
Right. But when you accept that that's okay.
Yes, but it's difficult to accept if you don't know if that is what's happening, and then you don't know what to do with it.
Right. Because
it's overwhelming.
It feels like everything's going away. It feels like everything's falling apart.
It feels like you're dying, and you're dying. Yeah. It feels like you're dying. And we're really afraid of nothing, right? The null, the point of null. Remember when we had the episode on The Secret of the Universe, where I talked about the whole problem with Earth is that we have went away from understanding that 1 and 0 on the binary sequencing of things. I think that's the episode we talked about in it. Or the binary sequencing, whatever it is. But basically is we have been taught that 0 is non-existence and 1 is existence. And so because we've been taught that 1 is where you are alive and everything is well, hence, and from looking back into this episode, is there's definitions, there is structures, there's the knowing, there's all these answers right here. And then this is what holds form. We have been taught that 0 has no form. Which is not true.
And therefore it's bad.
And therefore it's bad because that's death. That's non-existence. But that is not true. In fact, more form, more experience, more existence exists in the 0 than there's in the 1. Because 1, by definition, is a limiting concept because it has all the presets. Does that make sense? I know from the programming standpoint, 0 also has definitions, but so I know that does not transfer. But you know what I mean? With us, point of null is non-existence. And point of 1 is all of these definitions and rules and whatever.
Right.
But because we have not been taught, in the AAA scenario, you replace one addiction with the next addiction, we don't know that we don't need to replace things. It's okay to be at the point of zero. It's okay to be at the point of flow at all times from the momentum of the greater flow of the universe, as opposed to all the limited definitions of one. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me.
Okay. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.